No. Okay. And here is my wonderful, wonderful friend, Glenn.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Looks like he's bringing you food.
And on that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world, according to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. Claps all around, and we salute you, America's humble servant. And of course, I want to welcome everybody that's in the chat. And I want to tell everybody, thank you so much for downloading the episodes. If there was an issue with the download the other day, that was not any big government conspiracy. It was simply a fine tune-up that we had to do. So if you have a problem, just re-download the episode. If on Apple Podcasts, it didn't allow you to listen to the show. And on that note, we're joined by former head of Fox Digital Media, Roger Ailes, second or third in command.
Wait, that is Roger Ailes?
No, that would be Ken, Media Action Network LaCourte.
Very nice. Very nice to see you, sir.
Good to see you. And of course, the president of Conservative Talk Radio from 93.1 WIBC, bam.
We are all cheering for Victor Hovland in the golf at the Olympics this week.
Yay, Victor Hovland. Yay.
And of course, the show wouldn't be complete without Renaissance man, voyeur, saint, sinner, lover, father, grandfather, economist, mathematician, statistician, mathematician, of course, economist, but most importantly, Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein.
And I would like to say, I defy any other physician in the world to have performed brain surgery. And this is the only tool I use, a fork, a common kitchen fork. I performed brain surgery on President Biden. I've tuned him up to at least a 60 or 70 IQ.
Taking on the old man.
And just for the record, that fork will only be used for purposes tonight of showing how surgery is done. But right off the bat, I want to get into what you just brought up about Senor Biden. If people are, you see, here's the problem. People are unaware.
Are you referring to the president of the United States?
Yes, I am. Yes, Senor Biden. And the other day, a lot of people don't get the news. So if people are unfamiliar with this story, because it doesn't get reported anywhere, let's say other than Fox or Breitbart or a few other sources, Joe Biden, I guess, was speaking to a bunch of truckers.
This is, wherever you are in the world, please stop what you're doing and listen to what Judah's about to say.
Yes, you can't incredible. Make this. You can't make. Okay, you see. Let me just preface it by saying, when I was drinking, I told many a tall tale. Okay, one of the tall tales was I am not joking. And Ben, I could see you eating. Is one of the tall tales was I used to tell women that I was the first Jewish quarterback to play for Notre Dame. I had seen this story on the news, and I decided his name was Gus Ornstein, and I decided I will take that story and become him. And Joe Biden obviously feels very similar to Judah Friedman, Ben Stein.
I hope you're going to end this by saying I made this up.
No, I didn't make it up. And he, of course, was speaking to no, I didn't make it up. And he was speaking to a bunch of truckers. My excuse when I told the story was I was a drunk. His excuse, it's either one, they always use the excuse, well, that's just old Joe, or and he told truckers that he used to drive trucks. He used to drive
not just trucks, not just
18-wheeler trucks. And Ben Stein, obviously, we all agree, or we're all suspect, or we all hypothesize. We have no data that he is in the early stages of dementia. But the problem when you have dementia and you've constantly lied your whole life, it's impossible to tell the difference. And they can always cover it up now with saying, "Well, that's just old Joe. He likes to."
Yeah, except I think, if I may say so, this is one so tall, so ridiculous, so totally out of this world that it is a sign of beyond, whatever is beyond dementia, whatever is the next step beyond dementia, that's where he is. And God bless him. There are many, many old, sick people around. we hope they all are happy and lead great lives. But this guy's president.
Yeah, no, it's Ben. Let me ask you, Ben. Other than the obvious, and there's obviously the rumors about Reagan and his final couple of years, sadly, but this isn't the first 6 months, Ben. And I used the word the other night, chaos, and the definition of it, and it really does sum up his brain. Really, the definition of chaos really does sum up Joe Biden's brain. Have you witnessed this before?
I've never witnessed it on Joe Biden, but I will say it would be hard to imagine a less distinguished resume than Joe Biden's real life resume. So obviously, a lot of what he claims is going to be made up. So I'm scared. If you wanted to tell a story about Joe Biden that would scare me, you've done it.
And Ken, you being a former digital media, and it was obviously picked up by Fox and nowhere else in the media world. It is a very disturbing story because there's no reason. There's no reason to be talking to truckers and tell them that you used to drive 18-wheelers unless.
Look, Joe Biden has always had a penchant for the bullshit, even when he had his marbles. All right, we've seen him. Don't you remember that speech that they pulled apart when he ran for president the first time 30 years ago, where he talked about he graduated number 2 in his class and he was the only person there with a double major, and he listed like 6 things, and each one of them was pulled apart by the old the old media back then. So now you kind of combine that penchant of gift for the gab, a penchant for the BS, and losing his marbles. We're going to get a menagerie of things coming out of his mouth. I mean, it's a serious thing, and Republicans have to worry. What do we want? Do we want a guy who might not know it's Tuesday, or do we want an amendment popped in there and now we got Kamala going a different way? I mean,
no, you raise that, Ben Stein. He raises a
very, very, very good point.
He raises a great point, Ben. And before I get to Rob, I want you to respond to that, because what it is a quagmire that Republicans are in, because it's obvious that they could call for a cognition test, but on that slippery slope, then we get Kamala Harris, but then to respond to Ken, might be the gift of God for the Republican Party because she's so unlikable.
Yeah, but oh my God, who Speaker of the House?
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Who comes after? I forget who comes after the Speaker of the House.
We're screwed. I mean,
is it the Secretary of State? I forget who comes after the Speaker of the House.
Senate Majority Leader.
Oh, no. I think it's the President Pro Tem of the Senate. I think it's President Pro Tem.
What's the difference between the President Pro Tem and the Senate Majority Leader?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. We're going to deputize you, Judah, to find out.
Okay, so Rob Kendall, thoughts?
Well, first of all, Judah, some of my greatest lies were told after 1 a.m. in a bar, so don't feel bad about that at all. But of course, but the guy's been a professional liar his whole life. And so this is the sad thing of where we're at in America. We don't even know, is the guy suffering from dementia, or is he still just a pathological liar? I mean, remember he got caught recently about that bullcrap story he told about how many times he rode the train. Remember, he made up the story about the guy who was supposedly the conductor of the train, who had retired like 20 years before it was even possible he was on a specific train ride. The guy's like, I wasn't even there, man. So, I mean, the guy's just lied his whole life. So how do you even know?
Next, you're going to tell me that Corn Pop didn't exist.
But Ben, he raises a really good point. There was a brilliant movie with Albert Finney and Billy Crudup, and I believe Ewan McGregor, called Big Fish. And the whole essence of the movie was that their father was a teller of tall tales as he was coming to his life's end. And, he was always a teller of tall tales. It was a movie, Ben. This is reality. We literally
I keep thinking is we are looking at a very small part of the problem. Who is the next president? That's the problem. What's Nancy Pelosi going to be like in the Oval Office? That's the problem. What happens when the Iranians start shooting nuclear missiles at Eretz Israel, and Israel retaliates by turning all of the metropolitan areas of Iran into a glass parking lot. What happens then? I mean, who do we want a president with such little cognition ability as the top Democrats in charge? That's a very frightening situation.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, Judah, there's a difference between tall tales, right? Everybody tells tall tales. Stories grow over time. His stuff is just complete, easily disprovable bullcrap. And it often isn't even a story about something that's some compelling issue that you go, oh, that's kind of endearing.
Right. And, you know, after 4 years of a president who never lied, it's a weird transition.
It's a weird transition. It's a weird transition to go from what has essentially happened is that by a mysterious happenstance, they stopped at a homeless encampment. They picked up a guy who was in a homeless shelter who was suffering from early or maybe medium stages of personality disorder, and they made him president of the United States. And this is who we have. It's a very scary situation.
And there's a big difference, by the way, Ken, between, listen, we all know that Trump exaggerated, is his own best salesman.
I need some,
This is far different.
Right
The idiocy of Joe Biden's lies are just so wacky. I don't even, and like Ben said, it's really frightening. And Rob, as Ben said, that they turned away from, they literally sent back this week, and another story that people aren't going to see, 27 Cubans on 2 life rafts. They sent them back to Cuba to sure death. We've accepted as many people walking into this country as humanly possible, and 27 Cubans who are sure, we know for sure, will be dead as their boats get back or the Coast Guard brings them back is disgusting.
The number now is over 850,000 people illegally crossing the southern border. And those people are told, come on in. And they were told by the president of the United States in a press conference what their loved ones are supposed to say on the phone when you call so that they can stay here. The difference is they're coming into a state that the Democrats want to turn blue, and they believe those people will be lifelong, or they will create a lifelong group of registered Democrat voters versus these people coming from Cuba who are fleeing socialism, who are going to a red state, who are reliable Republicans.
No, they're fleeing a murderous, despotic communism, not socialism. Sorry.
And that's why that's the thing. It's anyways, I give up. Just put the ball in front of your face. I give up. But no,
I didn't bring any food this time because you said I couldn't eat.
By the way,
are you still in Beverly Hills?
By the way, Brady, I want to thank Brady. It's VP Kamala Harris. Second, it's Speaker of the House Pelosi. Third, it's President pro tempore.
That's what I said. And
but it's Senator Patrick Leahy. Next comes second.
Oh, he's actually a very nice guy.
What is the Senator pro tem versus the Senate Majority Leader?
He is the guy who was voted on by the fellow senators to be in charge when the vice president is absent.
Okay.
So there you are. So now we have the rest of the story. And but I want to get to Ben a little bit more about that because it's really important. Forget about, I mean, you're talking about 27 people on a boat. And I don't understand. I mean, I get the politics and the voting type of thing. But this is like, to send people back to sure death is absolutely, we have no proof on the other stuff. We never have in many ways, and we never will. But we know that sending back to Cuba, to Castro is instant death. I don't know how.
Probably worse than instant death. Probably worse. Probably slow, horrible death.
Yeah, it's a downright atrocity. And going back to your point, I really think with Biden, this administration, if you're a Cuban and you voted for Biden, you got to be out of your,
Well, I think voting for Biden was an extremely strange maneuver for a great many people. I'm sorry to say we're stuck with this madman and his colleagues. Now, I'd like to know who is his foreign policy team.
Well, you have Blinken, right? He's the
Right,
second.
Blinken,
I think he's
nod.
number 4th on the list. And then you have obviously many of the bureaucracies around him being the foreign policy. I mean, Rob, you study this a lot.
Well, but who is in charge? Who's actually running the country? It's a question we've asked numerous times on the show, and we know the crazy.
And they don't ever get back to us.
Right. They're not returning our phone calls.
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of scary? Because whether you like Trump or not, you knew who was in charge, and it's a bizarro world where there's these shadow people who you don't or you rarely ever see or hear from who are calling the shots.
Very, very scary, and you're right, Mondo Bizarro. My wife and I used to do an ad lib show when we were at Yale called Mondo Pegnataro. I don't know if any of you remember Pegnataro's. It was a big grocery chain in New Haven. This is like Mondo Delaware or something like that. Because in Delaware, I want to tell you something you probably don't know. Delaware has the best fried chicken on the East Coast.
None of us ever. Thank you so much for the. No, but he raises. You see, here's the point he raises, and I want to get to this because Rob just said it. So you have the CDC coming out with stuff. You have the FDA coming out with different stuff. You have the Secretary of this coming out with different stuff.
Wait a minute, Secretary of what?
The Secretary of State, Secretary of Homeland Security, whatever divisions it is. Everybody is giving mixed messages. There's absolutely no clear message coming from this regime. And whatever you want to say about Trump or this or that, there used to be clear messages. We can't get Joe Biden to do an interview after 6 o'clock at night that says something. You know, Donald Trump, for whatever people's opinions, he was never for a lack of words or if reporters asked him a question. And it's very frightening right now to go from all access, Ben, to no access.
It's very frightening to go to one person who is really quite well versed on almost every subject, whether it's government, business, sports, international relations, race issues, to a person who has to be prompted and briefed on every single word that he says. I mean, Trump, say what you like about him. And I believe I was one of the first to say he was not just a questionable guy, but acting illegally in some of his deals against the law. But he was a smart, well-informed guy. Biden, I don't know what's going on. Where did he come from? What planet did he come from?
That's a great question. On that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to That Man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein, and we're joined from the Media Action News Network.
I like that.
The Court, and of course, from 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the president of Conservative Talk Radio, Rob Kendall. And I want to welcome everybody. And also thank you for downloading the episodes, but also subscribe to Ben's email, benstein.substack.com. And another story that people aren't talking about. So we're on a panel here. 3 of the 4 people have been vaccinated. One of them has the weaker of the vaccines, but a quarter.
Wait a minute. I didn't know any of them are weaker than others.
Yeah, the Johnson & Johnson, the efficacy rate is 66%. But the reason I bring
like a very thin condom.
That is a piece of data I have not seen.
I did not see that. I thought it was closer to 87. But
no, it's about.
I'm
almost positive.
I think you have to give us some more data.
I'm almost positive. It's 66%, and they're the worst at reporting how long the span is.
Okay,
we could do it, Ben. People in the chat will do it. But the reason I brought this up was a quarter of the LA County, a quarter of the people that have gotten COVID again have gotten COVID have been vaccinated. So it's 2.5 out of every 10 people. So regardless, in Ken's case, if it's 87% or 66%, that is a freakishly high number of people that have already been vaccinated to. I mean, again, and I brought this up the other night, we're not getting the truth from anybody.
Well, you're getting it from us, which is to say that we don't know what's going on. I mean, Judah and I are in a 12-step program. One of the rules we learned is that the 3 smartest words in the English language are "I don't know," And I'm afraid we don't know what's going on in Washington now. When I still have a home in Washington, and when I go there, it's frightening. There's just an aura of confusion around the whole place that never used to be there. I mean, I grew up there. I've spent a large part of my life there. There's just an aura of complete confusion around the place. It's like a country that has had a coup, and nobody knows who's in charge.
Well,
now.
Nancy Pelosi's in charge because she called on the Capitol Police today, Ben, to arrest anybody, staffers.
Please, let me back up a little bit so you can say this real loud. Go ahead.
She called on all staffers and people, visitors, and people in the house to be arrested if they are not wearing a mask by the Capitol Police.
Arrested by the Capitol Police.
Arrested by the Capitol Police, yes.
It's phenomenal. It's breathtaking. I mean, there is our future arrest.
There you are, Rob. I mean, Ken, I didn't mean to offend, by the way, your, and somebody did say it was 66%.
You know what? We were actually both kind of right on that. It's a 65% percentage of stopping you from getting COVID at all. And it's about an 85% chance of stopping you from getting serious symptoms of COVID. So both of them are kind of.
But I want to get back to this, Ken. Have you? I mean, with the Nancy Pelosi thing, I'm sure you saw the story today of her threatening, as they're having the Capitol Hill police on, in front of in this whatever sham thing this is. Now she wants the Capitol Police to go out and arrest everybody that's not wearing masks.
Well, God help us is the short answer to that.
No, I'm talking to Ken. But yeah.
I know, God help.
Yeah, we've had a question. Nancy's kind of losing it too. They are doing their best, the Democrats, to kind of turn unvaccinated people into the lepers of the biblical era, and to blame everything for the expansion of the virus and the new whatevers on the unvaccinated people, even though that's a far stretch on things. They got to hang their hat on something.
And Rob, I mean, you're the unvaccinated one of the bunch. You stand to lose the most. You're going to be named very soon. And they're actually, I mean, there are stories today being reported that they are going to start. You are part of a registry of people that haven't been vaccinated. But at this point, I got to say, Rob, if you live in LA County, you're a 0.25% chance of getting COVID, even if you were vaccinated. So yeah.
Well, I'm on a list. Don't threaten me with a good time. I mean, I've been on worse lists than that. But that's the thing. And now we're seeing it. Here's the crazy thing. So we're seeing this with these NFL guys who've reported for camp, and they're being asked by these NFL sports reporters if they've been vaccinated. And a great example was Carson Wentz, who's the quarterback for the Colts. He just said in his press conference, I respectfully and politely decline to answer your question. It's none of your business. He didn't say he was. He didn't say he wasn't. And you're not required to be. But people are losing their minds over what NFL players have or have not been vaccinated when there's nothing in the NFL agreement between the players union and the league that requires you to be vaccinated. And it's just crazy, this obsession over who's been vaccinated when there's clear evidence that in many cases the vaccine is not working.
Yeah, no, Ben, he's completely right.
It's a terrifying situation and very typical of the new left in America. You guys are too young to remember this. We used to have a phrase, the new left, which was in the days of McGovern, which referred to left-wingers who weren't the old-time card-carrying communists like certain people I could mention who grew up near me in the suburbs of Washington. But they are the new left. One of the hallmarks of the new left is not being able to connect data with conclusions. So, for example, your young people today will say, oh, gosh, Cuba sounds like a delightful island paradise. But they have no data to prove it. They have no data to prove that it's anything but a huge, giant, mosquito-infested prison. So where's the data about any of these things? So I'd like to see that data. But in today's world, they don't connect data with the conclusions. They just press buttons on the computer and certain things come out. Where does the computer get the answer? Where does the computer get the data? I don't know. Nobody knows.
What if the
Now,
data says that happy societies are based on the cheapest hookers? Then they win.
Well, I don't think so. I'll tell you why. Because
Eastern
well,
Europe.
I better not.
know. Eastern
I better
Europe,
not.
you got me.
I better not tell you.
I had thank you very much for bringing that up. But I think, Rob, what Nancy Pelosi was trying to do with the Capitol Hill police today,
Surely you are
arresting.
not. Surely you are not saying that Nancy Pelosi is a cheap hooker.
Uh,
I hope that's not true because she's a fine woman.
yeah, she's. You mean fine in the sense of never mind.
She's very fine.
Can I take that one step further?
No,
Okay.
I'm scared to death of you taking something one step further.
Take a look at the rack on Nancy Pelosi.
I know. I've noticed that. It's incredible. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I'm not saying I go there, but it's
I know.
Holy shit, she's got a big set.
I know, because she must have had an incredible amount of plastic surgery. And I keep thinking, if that is the level at which these people respect themselves or how they judge themselves is how big their breasts are, that's a scary thing. I don't think Napoleon.
Now, you cannot be scared of women with big breasts.
What did you say?
You can't be scared of women with big breasts. You're scared of riots in Beverly Hills. You're scared of Nancy Pelosi arresting people. You're scared that we don't know Joe Biden. You cannot be scared by old ladies with big boobs.
I gotta be honest with you guys. Neither Rob, did you ever notice this? Because I never have.
Check it out, guys. Check it out.
No, I think I'll pass on checking it out.
Much noticed it. I very much noticed it.
I'll bring a picture next week.
Oh my God.
I very much noticed it.
Rob, I see you sitting there silently, so you can speak up and say it's okay.
I never thought ever in my wildest dreams that I would be on a panel with the great Ben Stein discussing cleavage size for Nancy Pelosi.
It's not cleavage size, it's breast size. She has had her breast done, obviously.
I don't know about that. Come on.
Many times over and over again. She now has nuclear powered breasts.
You guys, I can never make it past the face. And on the next, I want to move on to the next thing because this is absolutely abhorrent. And it's David Crosby, the jackass, the least talented of all the bands he was ever in. I never understood
wooden ships on the water, very free,
and who has literally called for the murder of Rupert Murdoch. Ben Stein.
If that is true, and I must say I read my Wall Street Journal this morning, as I generally do. I didn't see it, but if that's true, it is a clear felony. Inciting murder is a clear, unequivocal felony.
I will read you the exact quote.
Okay, please.
Singer David Crosby has called for the killing of Rupert Murdoch, saying the media titan should be taken out and shot as punishment for running Fox News.
Well, wait. Why does that have to be taken out? Because I mean,
you don't want to shoot him inside; it gets messy.
If that's true, I actually happened to have heard David Crosby give a speech several years ago in Malibu at a place, certain 12-step meeting, and he swore he stopped using drugs. So I am quite certain that he made this as a sober, considered, and reasonable judgment.
Yeah, I can, and the reason I brought the story up is you being a former person head of Fox News who took a lot of crap via the media. I mean, there's a certain point where this is, the FBI, and I want to get more into this with the Tom Barra case, as we discussed the other night. The FBI, do you think they're going to do anything to David Crosby?
No, I think that they're going to say that was an expression of speech. Hang him.
No. That is not. No. You are not under the First Amendment.
I guarantee that that's
no incitement to violence is allowed. But
I understand
because he's a left winger, he will get away with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, look, this is a guy who's been arrested twice for having an illegal firearm on him.
I thought it was for I think it was for at least one of the times it was for carrying a large quantity of dope.
Well, he's been arrested for cocaine. He's been arrested for other dope. He's been arrested for DUI. He's been arrested for fleeing the scene of a hit and run. But two of his times were because he had a 45 on him, and I believe one of those times he had coke on him as well. So anybody who's got an illegal firearm and that much coke on him at the same time, I'd take it a little seriously.
Yeah, Rob, I mean, you really do have to take this seriously. I mean,
I take it very seriously.
And this is an instance of I believe I agree with Ken. I don't think anything's going to happen to him, but this is actually a major crime, threatening to kill somebody.
No, he's not threatening it. He's encouraging people to do it, but that is a crime.
That's what he's doing.
Well, but think about it. Trump got kicked off social media for telling people to go home, be peaceful and go home. And he got kicked off social media. And David Crosby, who's an influential person, is openly calling for the death of another prominent person. Doesn't matter whose death you call for. You shouldn't call for anyone's death. But no, you're right. It's a complete and total double standard where Trump is kicked off social media for telling people go home and be peaceful. And this guy's calling for someone's death and nothing happens to him. Nothing.
You see, Ben, and he raises a great point, Ben, because as if you work for Fox News at this point, you are a target. And I think he used to be one even more. I think right now, with the pervasiveness of like watching Tucker Carlson be, having his house doxxed of where he lived, of people coming really close to breaking in, his wife having to hide. We saw what happened to him the other day.
Wait a second. What was that?
Where that guy confronted him at the store and started just screaming at him and videotaping it so he could get the video to go viral. But literally, if you're Tucker Carlson, and I bring this up because it's sort of like the scenario of a police officer, Ben. Every time they walk up to a car, they have to be very suspect that person, they could never walk away again. If you're in the media right now, Ben, and they love to blame Trump's people, they have never done anything to a reporter.
That's right. They've never done anything to a reporter, and they've never done anything to anybody in the Biden administration. So, no, I mean, this is a very, very serious situation. We have now a situation akin to the situation where the Bolsheviks had taken over in Russia, and they were allowed to incite anybody to commit murder, or where the Nazis had taken over in Germany in 1933-34, and they were allowed to incite them to commit murder. People don't realize that Germany, which had been considered one of the most civilized and cultured countries in the world, one of the very most civilized and cultured countries in the world, suddenly turned to an epidemic of murder upon the accession of Adolf Hitler, and people were just being murdered out of hand. No trial, no indictment, nothing. Various very prominent people were just being shot, and the Nazis snickered about it. And foreign correspondents would ask about it, and the Nazis would snicker about it.
And Ken, I want to go to you because I'm looking at the chat, and it's not hypocrisy. Everybody's a hypocrite. This is called dangerous. This is very dangerous type of hypocrisy. This isn't just being a hypocrite. This is you as a former person that worked in this bit for Fox News. It's a scary time.
Look, you always have to be worried when I mean, usually before political violence starts. And to be honest, we've been pretty good at how do I say, our recent history. The high level political violence has not approached what it has approached in the late 60s when they were shooting politicians, when dozens of bombs were going off in a summer, when violence, when targeted death violence was more common. Certainly, we had a summer of love. We had a summer of love and a coda on January 6th, right? But no, look, language like that creeps that up. It puts up that pressure, and somewhere, what you got to be worried about is that some asshole is saying, you know what, I'm going to teach the children well. I'm going to go kill Rupert. And you have to be worried about that, and you have to take that seriously. And he should be, if not prosecuted, certainly that he should have the visits and the.
Well, may I ask a question? Why shouldn't he be prosecuted? I mean, what?
No, he should be. We just don't think he's going to be because.
I know. We all agree he's not going to be. But who is the attorney general?
Look, I don't know enough about the law to say what is incitement is wishing something. He should.
No.
I don't know.
No, what he's done is
right.
Unequivocal incitement. Unequivocal incitement.
And Bennett, right. And so, but Rob, so it raises the question, you being in the talk media, and everybody that should watch a movie, one of the most brilliant movies about this type of thing in the world, which was Talk Radio. And if you haven't seen the movie Talk Radio, it was a play first, written by Eric Bogosian. and it's based on a true story. It's based on I'm going to forget his name, but a guy in Atlanta, a Jewish talk show host in Atlanta. That was sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was murdered, and because of the stuff he said on the air, and that's what it was based on, Rob. And you, as a person that speaks his mind quite, every day about topics like this, it has to be a concern of yours. At a certain point, the more you let people speak, the more the incitement, they'll call you an inciter, Rob, but what they're doing is not insightful.
Well, I promise you, if I called for the death of anyone, I would be fired within seconds of doing that. I would not be allowed to finish the show, much less, continue on a regular basis. So yes, absolutely, there's a double standard. But I mean, like our building, which is in downtown Indianapolis, has a very secure parking garage. It has double pane bulletproof glass. It's impossible to get in the building. And they've done this because of threats that have been leveled over the years against various people who have worked in that building. I mean, Mike Pence, who's the vice president, once worked in that building. I mean, it's always been a bastion of conservative talk. So you're right. Absolutely. It's not a game. And some people take it, way too serious and are not hesitant at all about trying to enact violence on people who are on the right, who they want to silence or they don't agree with.
And Ben, he raises a great point. And this was always the thing, what they would say about Trump supporters or Trump was they at rallies, they would have fun. They'd have a good time. You never saw them leaving rallies and having riots after a Super Bowl. You never saw them running up and down the streets, basically pulling Maxine Waters on people at restaurants. You never see conservatives do that. It's not the normal. It's not it's not the way. And I'm just stumped how some people just have absolutely, they can't see what they're doing.
I think that these people see what they're doing and they know the score. They know that the media is in charge and the media is on their side and the media is not going to let anything bad happen to them. I mean, it's a really interesting thing. Big Wifey and I, the saint of saints, spend almost every night watching Perry Mason. Those of you who are old enough to remember Perry Mason. Now, Perry Mason was a lawyer. He could go around defending people who are accused of crimes. There was never any fear that he was going to be assassinated. There was never any fear that the media was going to whip up hatred against him. It was a different era. It was a whole. I'm stunned when I watch it and see shows from the late 50s. It was a whole different, dramatically safer America.
Well, but 10 years later, everybody was getting shot.
Yes, you're entirely right.
Wallace,
you're right. You're right. Then you're right. That tells me that we can change now from the fairly peaceful way we're living to a much less peaceful way very quickly. Let's not forget that psychopath went out and shot at the Republican and the congressman who were practicing for a baseball game. Somehow, nobody ever tied that back to the Democrat Party. Why? Why is it that certain people are able to get away with violence and incitement to violence? If you have continuous incitement to violence, you're going to eventually have violence.
And Rob's a better target than Rupert. I mean, Rob, you're 25 years old. You got a whole lifetime of screwing people up from the liberal point of view. Rupert's 126 this year. He doesn't have much more time on him. Just saying. It's
so weird too, right? Like, I mean, and we were talking about this earlier today. Radio broadcasters or TV broadcasters or authors or whatever, like they don't have any power over anything. Like Tucker Carlson never votes to raise or lower anyone's taxes. I never raise or lower anyone's taxes. We have absolutely no power over anything. And yet the left is so obsessed and so fearful of voices being out there that's what they do. They threaten the people who aren't even in the office. They can't do anything.
I disagree with the premise of that. I believe that words and ideas have tremendous power. You can't vote on anything.
I'm sorry.
I believe that words and ideas have tremendous power. It's not a direct power like you get to vote and raise my taxes, and I know you wouldn't. But you can, but by influencing people to vote, to act, to live their lives differently, by thinking differently, that's a very clear and big power, and they're smart to be nervous of that.
But why wouldn't you focus on the people who actually do the stuff? You're so intimidated by the idea of free thought. I mean, that's weird.
It's not sure. Robert Kendall, our dear friend and favorite guy. We are not talking about thought at all. We're perfectly happy to have anyone think whatever he wants or she wants. We're talking about an incitement to commit violence. We're not. I can have thoughts all I want about
Well, he was
Nancy
saying,
Pelosi's
Ben,
breasts, but
why
I'm not
would they
be
be
able
so
to murder
worried
her.
up over this?
Sorry, say that one more time.
I think that Rob was saying, why is the left so wee-weed up over the Fox News channel or by conservative thought?
I see. I'm sorry. I missed that.
I think that's where he was going with it.
And he raises actually such a great point with that, because we are such a small, it's like we have this tiny little medium compared to everything else, and it just frightens them. It frightens them. I mean, they literally have 99% of the voice. 99% of the voice belongs to the left. Are the 1%, the dissenters, Ben Stein, it frightens them more than anything in the world. Like, God forbid, news gets out.
The truth is terrifying to liars. Truth is terrifying to people who believe in the power of the big lie. The truth is something frightening to the communists, to the Nazis, to the thought police in Imperial Japan. The truth is a terrifying thing. The truth is terrifying to gangsters. The truth is terrifying to robbers. The truth is terrifying to Black Lives Matter. The truth is a terrifying thing.
Okay, and you, Rob, go ahead and all.
Well, I was just gonna say, maybe it's not such a big deal to me, because when I was an elected official, my address was public record, so I used to get things sent to my home all the time. So to me, I recognize that 99.5% of the people who say the stuff, it's all talk. Now, there are certainly some people out there, as you mentioned, like the movie Talk Radio, which is based on a true story, who will do it, and that's what they want. They want to intimidate people, and like I always said, for me, don't threaten me with a good time. But I think the vast majority of it is posturing. But you're right, there is that 0.5% who become so obsessed with it that they will do something crazy.
Yeah, but that's right. Okay, then let's shut up the people who incite them to do things that are crazy. I mean, why is it that an incredibly rich, important person like David Crosby is allowed to have an unequivocal incitement to violence and nobody does anything about it? And President Biden, who is the president after all, yes, he has certain deficiencies and defects, but he is the president. He is the chief law enforcement officer of the country. Even above Merrick Garland, he is the chief law enforcement officer of the country. Why hasn't he already spoken up and said this is outrageous behavior?
Because Ben, he agrees with it, and he's not there, and he just doesn't.
Okay, and so he's not there, and he's the president, and the Democratic Party put him up to it, and they're undoubtedly going to put him up to it again, unless they put up Mrs. Harris. It's a very frightening scenario for this incredibly great country. Like we have here, let's just look around you. I was out and about all day long, going to various appointments and shopping and so forth. And I kept thinking, God, this is a great country. It is so unbelievably great. It is beautiful. There's so much food in the grocery stores. The air is beautifully clean and wonderful. This great country. And we have a president who's telling us what a bunch of shits we are and how we're racist and sons of bitches. And we have the best country there's ever been in the world. Who ever heard of a president until now saying what terrible people we are in the United States of America? Who ever heard of such craziness and sedition?
And David Crosby is 79 years old. He's 79 years old.
Can anyone actually be that old?
And Ben, not to break anybody's anonymity, but there are quite a few people, Alec Baldwin being one of them, who has no problem being absolutely out of control in his mind and saying, and supposedly claims out loud that he's sober. So, what is that old expression? You could take the drunken, the horse thief A drunken horse thief is
I'm still a horse thief.
It's still
Take a sip of something.
is
No, a drunken horse, a sober
The
horse
drunken
thief
horse
is still,
thief you
no,
can
a
take
sober
out
horse
of the
thief is still a horse
pasture.
thief.
You can take the drunken horse thief out of the pasture, but you can't bring him to water.
So, but my point is, like, think about it.
Good work, Ken.
At 79 years old, this is where your life is. You're rich, you're famous, you haven't had a care in the world for over 50 years, and it's 79.
Well, I don't think he likes being in prison.
I mean, like, that's what you're focused on. I mean,
look, both sides are in their bunkers right now. We're both in our informational bunkers, right? So
I don't think we Republicans are at all.
I agree with Ben on this. I agree with Ben on this.
We're under attack, and we're trying to be brave.
We live in America, and we spent an hour talking about masks and some 79-year-old guy who is an idiot.
70. Look, let me tell you something. I'm 76. I'd like to assure you there is still a lot of pleasure left in your 70s.
I just don't think there's a lot of danger left in your 80s. Unless
you see, but Ken, the point you're missing is that the danger, he's calling out.
I got it all. I'm just saying that the media consumption habits that the four of us have and the media consumption habits that those guys have are not like they were in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 10s, which were kind of liberal here, but they've spread out enough where all David Crosby hears is how Fox is lying and their lies about COVID killed people and their lies about the Second Amendment are killing people, and they whip themselves into a self-righteous fervor. He in his heart, even though he just called for the killing of somebody, he in his heart thinks that he called for the killing of a 32-year-old Adolf Hitler. He believes he is right because...
Well, then you're just telling us he's insane.
I'm telling you that he is clearly screwed up and misguided.
Okay, so you're telling us
we have a lot of. I don't know if that's insane.
You see, but here's the difference, and Rob, is that Ken's right. We all read our own news. You still go to the Drudge Report, which I'm fascinated by. I haven't been there in probably about 10 months. I am fascinated by that. But the difference is, for the most part, show me the one celebrity or the one outspoken person on the right that has said and come anywhere near to what
death of a liberal,
right, or to Madonna or Johnny Depp or to blowing up the White House or whatever it is. Show me one, Rob, that has that much power, and those people have a lot of power. Johnny Depp's, Madonna, as far as, and when I say power, I mean influence over people. Show me one.
I love that.
Well, they don't exist because they would be canceled immediately. They'd be fired. They'd be whatever. And that's the difference, is the Democrat Party and the national media work in conjunction with each other. And the national media, by and large, is just a mouthpiece for the Democrat Party and far left radical liberalism, which means not only pushing the narrative, but also defending the people who push the narrative.
And not only that, let's get to another big essence, which is the far left is always accusing conservatives of being religious and trying to use religion to control, for example, women's bodies. Where do you ever see a genuine conservative a religious conservative trying to control anybody except to urge people to go out and forgive? I have a very smart friend in Canada, which is a great, great country. And she sent me a list of quotations from Jesus and also from the Old Testament about forgiveness. And I keep thinking to myself, if we had politicians who talked about forgiveness and loving one's neighbors and so forth, instead of talking about hurting people and controlling people, this country would have a new birth of freedom that would be glorious, like the bursting of a flower.
No, you're completely right. And by the way, I don't know if I corrected myself. His name was Alan Berg. That's the one. That's the radio talk show host was executed, and he was from the Denver area. And I got to be honest, Rob, that movie and everybody, that was one of the most profound movies I had ever seen when I saw it. I was 12 or 13 years old, and I just thought it was very influential in how in my life. It was just a brilliant movie. But Ben, you brought up I need a little history lesson. Ken could talk about this too, and maybe Rob and I could learn from this, because you brought up the 60s, and I think it's really what you were talking about with all that was going on. Can you explain to us what was going on? And I don't mean the summer of love, but what you're referring to. Obviously, there was Kent State and the violence that was going on. What was it like? How did it go from Opie, from Mayberry?
I will tell you that I'm so glad you asked that question, because Opie and Mayberry and so forth suddenly seemed as if they're passe and uncool. If you called for the bombing of the Pentagon, if you called for blowing up people's houses and government offices, you got laid. And that was a big, big difference. And you were cool. What changes everything is if you're cool. Are you cool? If you're cool, you're not talking about Opie. You're not talking about peanuts. You're not talking about Little Abner. You're talking about killing people. That makes you cool. Joan Didion, very, very, very famous writer, woman who was incredibly kind to my wife and me when we moved to LA. Incredibly, incredibly kind to us. She wrote brilliantly in the book Slouching Toward Bethlehem about how suddenly being out for death, for killing, was cool. And she herself became a huge fan of mass murderers like the horrible Manson family. Suddenly it was cool because cool people said, hey, it's cool to want death.
Why did that happen, and how did that change come into effect?
Because that's a very good question, Ken, and I do not know the full answer to that. But suddenly it just became the fashion to say, let's kill someone.
Was it just the extreme of a reaction against a parental society? And
everything. I think if you're a psychiatrist, you said everything is a reaction to your parents, and everything is a reaction to parents. But if you are, I can tell you, during the 50s, things, to me at least, I was a small child, but they seemed great. America seemed wonderful. Then suddenly somebody came along with the crowbar of racism and said, you, America, are racist dogs. And this is the reason this scares me very much, is this is the same crowbar that's being used right now to try to pry apart the United States of America, this false, phony allegation of racism. The problem is that in the 50s, it wasn't a false allegation. There was a lot of terrible racism, but it was incomparably better than it had been during the 20s or 30s or 40s. And it was moving in the right direction. But still, allegations of racism are very, very powerful motivators of people, and they still are. And this scares me a lot, that the left has learned to use the allegations of racism to pry apart this glorious America.
No, that was extremely well said, and thank you very much for that history lesson. And Rob, he's right. We're always a hop, skip, and a jump away from. I mean, it was 10 years.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. What about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which I believe was November 22, 1963? Then suddenly, epidemic of violence. So many people in the political world getting killed, and it suddenly became exciting and cool. There's a wonderful, wonderful book called Radical Chic. I believe, I think it might have a subtitle, Mowing the Flatcatchers, by Tom Wolfe, about how America suddenly went from being interested in society and fashion to being interested in killing. And that it just became cool to talk about killing, just like it became cool. Germany had been largely impressed by the accomplishments of German Jews, and then suddenly it became cool to hate Jews and want them all to be killed.
Ben is spot on. I think the assassination of John Kennedy was a serious turning point, and the 60s may never have happened as we knew them if John Kennedy hadn't been assassinated, because it was like it unlocked this just Pandora's box of hatred and insanity throughout the country.
Very beautifully put. Pandora's box, indeed. And Pandora's box is now being pried open by the media with the help of these wicked people at Black Lives Matter, and with the help of wicked people on Capitol Hill and in media media, even at a very low level. Example, I, your humble servant, have a very modest home in Malibu, which is basically a small town. And the only local magazines and newspapers are so left wing. It's insane.
No, I mean, I'm really grateful for this lesson. I mean, Ken, you lived through it a little bit, obviously. Do you notice the similarities too?
I don't know, but I want to start a militia. 4 of us should get like a gang together. Let's get in on this. Look, I see the cyclical patterns to it. I was younger than him. I didn't see what was happening in the 60s, but there was a lot of political violence. And again, the larger questions is what brought us to that. And of course, the most important question is, how do we edge ourselves away from that and become Americans who are coming together? Now, part of it, I'm convinced, is that when a society or a company or when people are too successful and there's no serious existential threats, they start going after each other. And the United States hasn't had an existential threat, you could argue, I guess, the virus a little bit, since September 11th. And on September 12th, this country was very unified against the blank tards that did this. And the threats, the large-scale threats against the United States right now, very few people take seriously. We took them very seriously in the 80s when the Russians were pointing a bunch of nuclear weapons at us. We took
They still are, by the way.
Which they still are, but for some reason it doesn't bother us as much. The kids don't go under and do the stop, drop, and roll in case
duck
they get
and cover, duck and cover.
Yeah, duck and cover, which I recall doing. So I mean, part of it is when things are going too well, people and societies sometimes, I think, fall apart a little bit. Look at the suicide rate of America over the past 100 years. You'll notice one or two clear things. It goes up and it goes down, but you'll notice it dropped substantially right at World War II, right at World War I, when there was a larger purpose that Americans had to strive for.
Very good.
They stopped killing themselves. What a weird thing. You would think that, oh my gosh, here comes World War II. We got the fascists, we got the Japanese. Nobody wants to fight the Japanese, right? I mean, they're kind of serious in life. I mean, they're not a bunch of Muslims, right? I mean, they got their shit together, and they're bombing the West Coast, and you got the Germans on this, taking over all of Europe, and suicide rates plummet, which says that there's something about the human psyche and about the national psyche that when we are faced with a challenge, we will come up with it and we will slay it. When we don't have one, it's like, have you ever seen those you ever seen those race horses when they're before they're let go at Santa Anita, and they're in their cages? Some guys have been killed on top of those race horses. They bounce around because they're so eager to go after something. I think America might be a little bit like that.
But Ben, he actually brings up a really good point, and it's what he said, and it's that without God or some form of higher power.
Beautifully put. I'm in a 12-step program. It's all about turning your life over to a higher power. I will say very, very respectfully, it has changed my life. It has changed my goddess wifey, an actual saint. It has changed her life. It could change this whole country. This country needs a religious revival desperately. That doesn't just need it; it needs it desperately.
A spiritual revival.
And I think a lot of the problems in this country started when the Supreme Court went after worship of God, and we had a case where the justice of the Supreme Court went after God, and that was a really, really, really bad move.
Rob, final thoughts on that?
Well, I just find it fascinating, the place in which we live, in which it comes back to the idea that we are so afraid of the free form or the free flow of thoughts and ideas, that people are so hateful over, as you said, Judah, there's this one medium that conservative voices still exist in, and they're so afraid of it and so hateful about it that they call for the death of people who are in that medium, who don't harm or threaten or belittle or in any way impact anyone who doesn't seek out their content.
A vital component of that, if I may say so, Rob, is people who call for the death of those who are pro-life and anti-abortion. That is, people have called for the killing or life imprisonment of men and women who have said, don't kill innocent preborn babies. People have literally called for those people to be murdered. And that shows how scared people are of a basic truth, which is that thou shalt not murder. That's a very basic truth.
And I want to remind everybody, it's always comes from the peaceful people. It always comes from the hippies. You had Cat Stevens, who became Muhammad whatever, who called for the fatwa of Salman Rushdie. And we are so forgiving. I mean, Cat Stevens was brilliant. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And we all love it. And we loved his music, but he did call for the death of Salman Rushdie. And I really do believe this happened. I don't believe we probably have tons of data on where these threats do come from, as far as public figures go. And it never seems to be, I am proud to be part of a movement that doesn't do this, Ben. I'm proud to be part of a movement where the most outspoken voices, for the most part, are never calling for the fatwa of anybody they disagree with.
And I would say the most outspoken voices are calling for life, for the most innocent among us, the unborn. This country, as I've said, I'll say it again, needs to turn to God so desperately. It's absolutely insane.
What about spirituality? Also,
spirituality to me is virtually the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. And on that note, I just wanted to ask because I think sometimes for people, the God word could be a little harsh or could have a different. And we're saying
not to us, not to Alex and me.
Find something, as long as you're not it, as they say in the 12-step world. Find the higher power as long as you're not it, Rob. And by the way, I missed out on a joke before when you said if you had called for something on the radio, you'd be fired in a second. I wanted to say they would have pulled your plug or your plugs in your case.
That's very funny.
But Kenny's the spokesperson for hair plugs. And if you're not familiar, and I will let Rob give a plug on that at the end. But if you just tuned in,
this is the end.
This is the end, our friends. And I want to thank everybody that's been in the chat tonight. I have been reading. I know Ken reads the chat too through the show, and it's greatly appreciated. Remember to download the episodes, even if you listen to it here. It means a lot to us. Leave that 5-star review. Go to benstein.substack.com, also spectator.org, and you could read Ben's stuff there. And also, if you could throw a few shekels their way, you could find Ken at my mother's favorite newsletter, MediaActionNetwork.com. And of course, you can find Rob Kendall every day streaming from 9 to noon on 93.1 WIBC. Bam! He is the president of Conservative Talk Radio. And give a plug for the plugs, Rob.
WeGrowHairIndy.com.
I love it. And of course, Ben Stein, sir, will you please take us out?
Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for me. It was good enough for Moses. It was good enough for Moses. It was good enough for Moses. And it's good enough for me. Well, there's quite a lot more, but